Hello, welcome back. I'm Ken. This is Mike.
Good
We
morning.
are moving forward. Mike, in our previous visits, we've talked about a lot of different leaders, a lot of different ideas for what it is to be a good leader and what it is to create helpful change in all different kinds of organizations.
Yes.
Where do we go from here?
Well, one of the things that I was thinking about is um, the old-fashioned joke, how do you eat an elephant? And the answer is one bite at a time.
Yep.
So the question is how do you get started? Where do you start? What's needed? So bringing change in organization, either in a department, in a family, or in a large organization, is a challenge because there's an existing momentum, and it's hard to get people to give up what they're used to and be willing to start with something that they obviously uh, don't know, understand, or value. So when you're trying to affect change, there is a challenge. There's no question about it. Otherwise, everybody and his brother would be able to do it. So when you have a turnaround, then it wouldn't be big news because, yeah, what's new? So it is a challenge. And especially in a larger organization, while the leader may promulgate certain values, certain thought process, it gets conveyed through the organization, and every level essentially dilutes the message. So by the time it gets down at the bottom of the pile, I guess what, so what's new kind of thing, or as a new phrase, okay, I don't know what they'll do, but I'm not holding my breath kind of thing. It's always a very high skepticism. So I was thinking about that. Then I thought about a book that I read a while back by Malcolm Gladwell. I don't know if you ever heard the name.
Yes.
He wrote a book called Tipping Point. And the thing that struck me with the book was that he drew some parallel between the spread of disease. And his point is his ideas, product, and messages and behavior spread just like viruses do. And the interesting thing with viruses is you don't have a leader. It just happens, it spreads. So the question then becomes, what factors are involved? What's needed to really make it happen? And every discipline has different interpretation of what needs to be done and, rationalization as to how do you bring about control or change. It's interesting to watch the news these days about the thing that we went through with COVID and the federal government and kind of the scandal that there was because they were promoting a certain thought process, and anybody who disagreed, guess what? They got squelched. So how do you spread things? And it had several points. One of them is that little changes can have big effects. And an example of that he uses and that I've seen in different places is New York City and Brighton and graffitis and other petty kind of activities that he put an end to with the thought that, little things, if they're not acted upon, foster bigger things. So it's a challenge. And not every initiative succeeds, but there are definitely some conditions that facilitate the spread or the adoption of a new thought or disease or whatever. And he talks about two elements that help the spread. One is he called them mavens. It's a Jewish term for the people who spread communications. You know, they're connected, they're wired in a community. And the point is that certain people will be key in spreading the the gossip, I guess you could say. The gossip mill is another example of that, is that you have an informal network that's at play that spreads true or false rumors of sorts. And it's an important aspect of it. And the second thing that he was talking about is stickiness. And stickiness is, how do you make something memorable? How do you make something acceptable? And in every one of the cases that we looked at, the stickiness, for instance, for Nehemiah, was to show how the change would bring a better life for the people who live within the Jerusalem area. In the case of Yunus, it was one at a time kind of a person who would want to start a business and understanding that the result would be a better standard of living. So every one of those people had what I would call received a message or saw something. That stickiness, and to me, I probably call it another term is to say, what's in for me kind of thing. And if you believe that that's in for me and it's worthwhile giving it a try, guess what? You try it, you know? And if you say, hey, no way, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole, then it won't go anywhere. So you've got to address those two things. How do you make your message sticky or acceptable or wanting a desire of the rest of the people? And the other thing is to find people within the organization that will be quick to implement that. Like, for instance, the last consulting that I was doing was there was one supervisor who was willing to try what I was talking about. And within a few weeks, you could see the numbers improving on the production area. They weren't working any harder. Actually, they let reassign two people to another area because they didn't need them, kind of thing. So it was, it was kind of an early success. And the question then becomes, how is the leadership promoting or putting the spotlight on the results and say, hey, this is possible. Where's your piece? Where's your contribution, kind of thing. So you've got to find a way to find those individuals. You have the same concept in marketing when you introduce a new product. Like, for instance, cell phones as an example. When Apple came out with a cell phone that was costing $1,000 when you could buy one for $70, my reaction is, you got to be nuts. Who's going to buy one of those? But you had a certain portion of the population who wanted the camera, who wanted the different features that suddenly you could do with a phone that was not available with a cell phone before. Smartphone versus cell phone kind of thing. Now, you almost can do the same thing on my cell phone as you can do on the laptop kind of thing,
That's true.
You send emails and send messages, you can pictures, that's, and so anyway, so you've got a certain percent of the population that are prone to try it. The innovators, they talk about 2.5%. So it's not a very big number. But if you manage to find those individuals, guess what? This is gold. Then there's another group that they call early adopters. and that's 13.5%. And there again, how do you get those guys energized? And how do you give them the press to promote to the rest of the organization, the latecomers, and say, hey, you know what, I can do that too, he's not that smart, I can do that. So, and that's the whole challenge is how do you foster contacts? How do you foster the spread of the idea, not just in the sense of a sermon. Like I remember when I joined Boeing, one of the things, big posters were quality was number one. So what, what are we going to do differently? You know, so it's not just a matter of banners and posters and phrases that get people to change, but it's action. So when you look at that, you see the same thing with, say, Breton. How did Breton get going with the police department? Well, the first thing he did is to assign 300 policemen to survey the rest of the force, 40,000 policemen in New York City plus, and to come back with what needs to be fixed, kind of thing. And I would be shocked if Breton was surprised with the results. So if he knew already the answer, what was the real purpose? The real purpose was to get people to verbalize and say, we can change. There are things we know we can fix. Let's do it. Right? So you've got to have that kind of a process. So I'm going back to my starting line. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You start small, and hopefully it spreads because people see the benefit. So that's a key thing. The other thing is how big the group should be. How do you reach an organization like Nissan with, thousands of employees? Well, he broke it up into different groups, different disciplines, different individuals, so that you had kind of a division within the company, each area being encouraged to come up with the solutions. And to be able to do that, to assist him, he had also brought some people from France, from Nice, from Renault, to assist him, not to take over from the Japanese to manage their business, but to assist them in the thought process so that they would come up with the ideas themselves and act on the things and respecting their responsibilities. So that's
Interesting.
kind of a challenge.
I have a question.
Yes,
Did Carlos Ghosn reorganize the company or did he work through the existing divisions?
it did no existing thing. He left the existing organization structure the way it was. But then in addition to that, he selected a whole bunch of people and divided the company into groups to look at purchasing, to look at manufacturing, to look at the amount of capital, the assets that they had, what's needed and what's not needed. So he divided the whole organization into different uh, areas of concern, and individuals, what you could call the mavens, people who were recognized within the organization as being willing to experiment, to try to come up with ideas, as compared to the people who were in charge. So he left the people in charge, got those guys to come up with ideas, and then the transfer or the communications between those groups and the existing managers or VPs or whatever it was that was involved, to then respond and say, okay, given what that is, this is what I'm going to do. So he left the accountability within the existing organization, but he brought in the external set of eyes to look at the particular discipline and say, those are the kinds of things that we could do that could greatly improve what the situation that we're in.
Thank you.
So it's a, it's a challenge. Uh, Another guy that I saw was a fellow called Dunbar, and he looked at the social time that people have within an organization, and he said that 40% of our social time is spent with 5 people. So you see that the network, the closeness is a very limited number of people. And he said another 20% was with 10 or more people. So say 15 people, 60% of your time is what you spend. So what you're trying to do is to influence those small groups and to choose, like for instance, particularly myself, if I went into a plant like the last one that I mentioned, I would get a sense as to who's receptive. And then I spend more time with that individual to get that going. And then hopefully when people saw the results, they say, hey, guess what? That can be done. That makes sense. Or, I've got things like that too.
And then people who were interested in other parts of the company would come
Yes.
to those people with whom you have spent time because they would probably hesitate to talk to the consultant, but
Yeah,
the employee that you'd spent extra time with who's receptive could be their point of contact.
exactly. And then the other thing that works hopefully in your favor is the grapevine.
Oh,
Because if people, while they may not doing it, they're watching.
yep. And talking about it.
Exactly, exactly. And when they say, hey, those guys are having fun. I remember one place in San Francisco where we were working with our production area, and nobody wanted to work there. Everybody wanted to be at corporate. But by the time we were finished, 9 months later, people from corporate were calling up the, the people at the plant and say, hey, do you have any openings over there?
Good.
Because the message was getting across, hey, guess what? We're moving, we're doing things, we're having fun. And that's the whole idea,
That's a great turnaround. Good for you.
exactly, exactly. So the whole idea is not to beat people into submission, but in the idea of how do I make your job easier? How do we eliminate the things that create problems that would make a lot of life easier if it wasn't? And the role of the leadership is to essentially eliminate those impediments or to assist in the elimination of those impediments.
We've talked
So,
about some great things, Mike. It's time to wind it up. We're all about out of time. Do you have a
so,
conclusion you'd
so
like to
you
give
have
us?
almost two things that have to work in parallel. One is the leader expressing the values and the things that are desired. Parallel to that, from the bottom up, you've got to start having the successes that show that the ideas are being promoted really have an impact. And they're not painful, they're a source of accomplishment, job satisfaction, excitement, as compared to, oh, do I have to go and do this again today? So you've got to have those two things working together. And if you're missing one, it won't spread.
Thank
So,
you. That's excellent. And I can see how it approaches it from both directions and it becomes effective for that reason.
yes,
Thank you. Thank you. I look forward to our next visit.
will do.